In the waning years of Gondor's might, as shadows deepened over Middle-earth and the power of Sauron grew in the east, there was a man named Haladron. Born in Minas Tirith, the proud capital of Gondor, Haladron's life seemed destined for obscurity. He was the son of a minor noble, a man of no particular renown, whose house had been in decline since the fall of Osgiliath, centuries before. Haladron grew up, hearing tales of the glory of Gondor's past, its victories in war, and the wisdom of its kings. But the Gondor he knew was one of fading splendor and looming threat. Haladron was always peculiar as a child. He was quiet and observant, with a keen interest in the old lore of Numenor, the ancient homeland of Gondor's people. His father, Hervil, had little time for such things, being more concerned with maintaining what little influence their house had. But Haladron's mother, an intelligent and kind woman named Alariel, encouraged his curiosity. She herself had an unusual background, claiming descent from the Northmen, though she never spoke much of her past. It was from her that Haladron first heard tales of the Astari, the mysterious order of wizards, and the lost arts of Numenor. As Haladron grew older, his curiosity led him to the archives of Minas Tirith. The city's great library, located in the upper levels of the White Tower, was a treasure trove of ancient knowledge. Haladron would spend hours there, reading scrolls and manuscripts on forgotten lore, particularly those dealing with the powers of the mind and spirit. The city's scribes grew accustomed to the young noble's presence, and while they dismissed his interests as the idle pursuits of youth, Haladron felt there was something more, something he couldn't yet understand, but that called to him. It wasn't until Haladron was in his 30s that he first began to sense his latent abilities. The awakening of his powers came not with a flash of light or a voice from the heavens, but in a small, subtle way. It started with his dreams. He began to have visions of places he had never been, dark forests, hidden valleys, and ancient ruins buried beneath mountains. These dreams were so vivid that he would often wake with a sense of profound loss, as though he had glimpsed something vital and ancient, now long gone from the world. In waking life, Haladron noticed that he could influence others in strange ways. A casual suggestion to a servant would be obeyed without question, even if it went against their duties. In moments of concentration, he found he could feel the emotions of others, almost as though they were his own. This empathy went beyond mere perception. He could, at times, ease their pain or intensify their fears with nothing more than a thought. It frightened him at first, but the more he experimented, the more control he gained. During this time, Minas Tirith was on edge. The shadow of Mordor had fallen more heavily upon the land, and the strength of Gondor was stretched thin. Faramir and Boromir, sons of Denethor, were the pride of the city, leading sorties against the forces of Sauron. But it was clear that the Dark Lord's power was growing. The men of Gondor whispered of doom, and the once glorious capital felt more like a city awaiting its end than a bastion of hope. One day, while studying an ancient text in the archives, Haladron stumbled upon a reference to a lost stronghold of the Númenóreans, hidden in the Ephil Duath, the mountains of shadow that bordered Mordor. The text was fragmentary and obscure, but it hinted at a forgotten place where the ancient kings had stored relics of great power, relics tied to the mystic arts of Numenor. Haladron became obsessed with the idea. He knew that Gondor's strength was failing, and he believed that if he could find this hidden stronghold, he might uncover something that could help his people. After months of preparation, and with little more than a map drawn from fragmented texts, Haladron set out eastward towards the Mountains of Shadow. The journey was perilous. The land between Gondor and Mordor was fraught with danger. And though Haladron was not a warrior, he had grown adept at using his powers to manipulate the minds of those who would bar his path. Bandits turned away without raising a sword, and orcs who prowled too close found their minds clouded with fear. After many weeks, Haladron found himself at the base of the Ethel Duath, where he discovered the entrance to an ancient Númenórean vault, hidden behind a waterfall deep within the mountains. Inside the vault, Haladron found relics from the time before the downfall of Númenor, scrolls, weapons, and most importantly, a staff that hummed with power long forgotten. The moment his hand touched it, Haladron felt a surge of energy course through him. The staff, it seemed, was attuned to those with the potential for great power. And in that moment, Haladron understood that he was more than just a man of Gondor. He was something older, something tied to the ancient arts of Númenor, and perhaps even the wizards themselves. When Haladron returned to Gondor, he was no longer the quiet scholar he had once been. He wielded the staff with an ease that belied the years of practice it should have taken to master such an artifact. His powers had grown, and he could now control the minds of others with little more than a glance. But more than that, he had learned to summon forces of the natural world, wind, fire, and even the earth itself bent to his will. Haladron knew that Gondor was on the brink of collapse, and while he loved his people, he also knew that the city's rulers were too proud and too rigid to accept the changes that were coming. So, instead of trying to save Minas Tirith, Haladron left it behind. He journeyed west to a remote region of Gondor near the White Mountains, where the ancient Númenórean influence still lingered. There, in the shadow of the mountains, Haladron founded his own route. He gathered followers, disillusioned soldiers, outcasts, and those who believed in his vision of a new Gondor. Using the power he had discovered, Haladron raised fortresses from the earth itself, built not by the hands of men, but by his will. His kingdom, though small, was strong, protected by both the natural defenses of the mountains and by the magic that Haladron wielded. As Haladron's power grew, word of his deeds spread to Minas Tirith. Denethor, the steward of Gondor, was wary of this new lord in the north. He sent emissaries to Haladron, demanding that he swear fealty to Gondor, but Haladron refused. He did not seek to overthrow the steward, nor did he wish to rule Gondor, but he would not bow to a kingdom he believed was doomed. This refusal sparked conflict. Denethor, already mistrustful of anything resembling sorcery, branded Haladron a traitor and a usurper. Gondor's armies marched north to bring Haladron to heel, but they were met with forces they had not expected. Haladron's soldiers were few, but his power over the natural world was immense. He summoned storms to sweep away entire battalions, cause the earth to quake beneath the feet of Gondor's finest, and twisted the minds of Denethor's commanders, turning them against one another. For several years, the conflict simmered. Gondor could not afford to fully commit to the war against Haladron, as the threat from Mordor was ever growing, and Denethor's own descent into madness made him increasingly erratic. Meanwhile, Haladron's kingdom thrived, attracting more followers and becoming a haven for those who sought refuge from the impending doom of Gondor. Haladron's downfall came not from Gondor, but from within his own ranks. Among his followers was a man named Berendil, a former captain of Gondor's army who had grown disillusioned with the steward's rule. Berendil, however, had never fully trusted Haladron's use of sorcery. As Haladron's power grew, so too did Berendil's fears that their lord was becoming something akin to the Dark Lord they all sought to escape. In secret, Berendil conspired with others in Haladron's court, and together they sought a way to overthrow him. They learned of an ancient artifact, a dagger forged in the fires of Haladron, which was said to be able to sever the connection between a wielder of magic and their source of power. Berendil retrieved this dagger from the depths of Mordor itself, braving the orcs and other foul creatures that guarded the land. When he returned, Berendil struck. During a great feast celebrating another victory over Gondor, Berendil approached Haladron and with a quick thrust drove the dagger into the Lord's heart. The magic that had sustained Haladron for so long was severed in an instant, and he collapsed, lifeless, to the ground. Haladron's kingdom fell soon after. Without his power to protect them, his followers were overrun by Gondor's forces, and the strongholds he had built crumbled. His name was stricken from Gondor's records, and his deeds were forgotten, save for in the whispers of those who had once served him. Though Haladron's reign was brief, his influence lingered in the hidden corners of Middle-earth. The relics of Numenor that he had uncovered were lost once more, buried beneath the ruins of his kingdom, and his story became one of the many tales of forgotten power in the Third Age. As Gondor fought its final battles against Mordor, few remembered the man who had risen from its heart to challenge both the Dark Lord and the Steward. But in the deep places of the world where the old powers still slept, the name of Haladron was not forgotten. For he had tapped into something ancient, something older than Gondor itself, and though his kingdom had fallen, the power he had wielded remained, waiting for another who might one day rise to claim it.